Welcome to Public Safety Talk Radio, the podcast for all of our heroes in public safety, including law enforcement professionals, firefighters, EMTs, corrections officers, healthcare workers, and more. The show is proud to be a part of the growing National Police Podcast Network. This episode is sponsored by Police Mortgage. Police Mortgage is a full-service mortgage company dedicated to serving police officers and first responders. Founded in 2008, Police Mortgage offers a variety of mortgage products tailored to meet the needs of those who serve and protect. Police Mortgage, for first responders who are second to none. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Public Safety Talk Radio, and as usual, I have another great guest, and as seems to be the theme lately, I have a fellow podcaster. I always love fellow podcasters because they know how this works, and they always come on time, which is perfect. So who I have for you today is Dr. Tammy Sharp. She is the founder and CEO of Law Enforcement Coaching LLC. She has been in the law enforcement world her entire life. Her dad was actually an outpost deputy sheriff and served 23 years as an officer after serving 20 plus years in the Air Force. She grew up witnessing firsthand, and I'm going to try to get this all in one sentence without flubbing this up. She grew up witnessing firsthand the stressor's mindset and residual effects from law enforcement lifestyle, as well as bearing witness to the compounding effects of stress and PTS. She also is the host of a great podcast called, and I love this name, Blah, 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 Something Wellness Podcast. Dr. Tammy Sharp, welcome to the show.
Thank you. First of all, kudos to all of that.
I've done this before.
Good job.
And maybe I'll still edit it out. Who knows? But it's great to have you. As we talked about before, I had the distinct pleasure to see both you and Chris Zamora do an excellent presentation for the Law Enforcement Survival Summit. And I said, I need to get at least one of them, if not both of them, on the show. And so I'm so glad that you were able to make the time. So let's talk about the business first, which is law enforcement coaching. And I know, unfortunately, you lost your father in 2001 due to cancer. And you mentioned on the website that was kind of part of the impetus of starting the work that you're doing. But if you could dig a little bit more into the whole motivation to start law enforcement coaching.
Yeah, that's multifaceted, but yes, I lost my dad very quick. When I was 11 years old, he was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, given 6 months to live, best case scenario, and he decided that was not his story. He lived for 7 years in complete remission and got to see me graduate high school, turn 18. I was an adult, and then he passed away shortly after, and very much been with me in spirit ever since. I share that because I learned a lot about Western medicine from a very young age, the good and the bad. And then I learned about the power of the mind and that we can create our reality. So after he passed away, I got introduced to Wayne Dyer, and Manifest Your Destiny, I think, was the first book in this whole space that I ever read, and it shifted my life. Fast forward, it was before COVID. So we, put everything on that timeline. Before COVID, we started working in the law enforcement space, having an idea of bringing coaching, just the concept of it. We were a different company originally. That's not a thing anymore. And then we have been law enforcement coaching for the last few years, have an amazing team. We have about 20 law enforcement professionals that we've trained to be coaches. And part of the motivation for that, because everybody comes from the law enforcement world on our team, peer support is great. It's needed. And it's great for the departments that after a critical incident or something that's work related. But the reality is officers are not going to seek out their peer support, especially in smaller departments, if they're going through a divorce or they're drinking too much or there's anything that could possibly impact their career. They are not going to talk to peer support. They're also more times than not going to seek out a therapist. And if they do seek out a therapist, finding one that's available, that is culturally competent, that is not going to be traumatized, especially by internet and sex crimes, where so many clients are like, yeah, my therapist fired me. I traumatized them.
So, that's rough when you traumatize the therapist, man.
That's a real thing, man.
Yeah.
So We're like, dude, there's a need, there's something missing. And so we came in with the coaching concept. I mean, we are not doing anything that's new. Coaching has been around in every field, but it is newer in law enforcement. There are a few individuals that have been doing coaching. There's a couple companies that kind of do it. The way that we are doing it, there's not that many that I know of companies are doing that. So basically, you can come online, you could do a call just like this. We don't record it, we don't keep notes, we don't do keep any files or anything. We keep it with active duty officers in mind. Confidentiality is the biggest
Hmm.
catalyst to that. And then just having somebody, you know, you and I were in different states, but we could sit here and talk and we can throw out the ABCs and we're going to understand exactly what each other means. And that's the driving force for that part of the company.
Yeah. No, a lot of great stuff in there. And as I said before we press record, since I started doing this, and even before Public Safety Talk Radio, I had Beyond the Call in the late 2010s or mid 2010s. And it seems like, every year I do a podcast for first responders, the options of wellness and to have a valid conversation among first responders has grown, which I love. Because a lot of times, and you hit on it, is sometimes a police officer just needs to have a conversation first.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and you would know better than I would, sometimes there is an addiction problem. Sometimes there is PTSI. Sometimes there is, something deeper where there needs to be therapy or something that's more clinical. Other times, you're just struggling with something and you need to talk to somebody that understands and is going to listen, and maybe that makes it better, or at least that's a start, more so than, hey, I'm going to push it down because I don't want my partner to know about it or my department to know about it, and so forth.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I think all of us in the wellness space throw around is you're not alone. You're not alone, especially in the suicide talk. You're not alone. But the problem is when you're in that dark space, you can be in a room, you could be in a stadium full of people,
You feel alone.
you're alone. And
Yeah.
somebody can tell you you're not alone. That does not resonate when you're in that space. But when you sit down and talk to somebody that shares, hey, this is what happened when I was in this space.
Mhm.
That's where the connection starts coming in and being like, okay, somebody else, you're not going through exactly what I'm going through, but you at least have been there. And for us, I always say, like, my team, they are not a team of knight in shining armor. They have
Mm-hmm.
their, dents and scratches, literal bullet holes in their armor. They have been through some shit and they have now come out the other side. That's the thing. I always say my personal philosophy is misery loves company. I
Mm-hmm.
company. I will go into the dark. I'm not afraid to be in the dark with you, but I'm not going to stay there. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, bring people
I
along.
I love that. That's a perfect line. I may use that. I'm willing to go in the dark with you, but we're not going to stay there.
Yeah, turn a light on. The light switch is right there. It's super easy.
Yeah, yeah. I share this liberally on my show just in case it helps somebody else, but I'm not shy about saying that I'm an alcoholic in recovery 5.5 years. And 5.5 years ago, when you first start that journey, you're thinking, "Oh wow, I'm a real piece of shit." I did this, I did that, they did the other thing, and then you talk to other people that have gone through it, and you're like, yeah, I woke up in an alley, and they're like, dude, I wish I just woke up in an alley. I woke up in jail, man. If I woke up in an alley, I could just dust myself off and go home. You were lucky.
Yeah. Well, and so that's another, when people ask me what my why is, I have like a laundry list of whys, especially every day. Like, why am I doing this today?
Right.
When it comes to the addiction and the alcohol part, one, I was married to an addict. So I was like an after school special. My dad used to threaten me. He would literally threaten to send me a juvie if I didn't clean my room. So drugs and alcohol were not an option. He would say, I'm going to take you to the jail and show you the burnouts, and he would. So I saw like the dark side of that from a young age. So I was an after school special. I went home, I didn't do anything. I did my homework and I've shared the story before, but he was a genius when it came to parties when I was in high school. He was like, you know what? You can go to the party and you're not going to get in trouble. I'm like, And he's like, if I find out that you're at the party, I'm gonna bust it. I'm gonna send your friends to juvie, the adults to jail, and you're gonna be the school narc. So I didn't do anything. I was
Yeah.
squeaky clean. Then I found myself married to an addict and dealing with all of that firsthand, having to, check pupil dilation and figure out where the lies were coming from.
Yeah.
So that was my first rough into addiction and all of that. Got out of that marriage, and then I owned a bar. So this picture back here, you can't really see
Mhm.
it, but that is my old rundown local dive bar on Maui.
Nice.
And I had to make moral decisions of serving alcoholics alcohol. Like they'd come from their AA meeting for a drink. And I'm like,
Well, having been to AA meetings, sometimes you need something after
sometimes
some
it's
of those.
stressful, right? Well, and so it's like, I'd have to make the decision, am I going to not serve them knowing that they're going to go get it somewhere else, or am I going to serve them that way I can monitor it, make sure they get home okay, and kind of talk them through. So before I was ever a life coach, I was a bartender. So that counts. That's more impactful than my doctorate.
Probably. Yeah, yeah, so much to unpack there. By the way, you wives of addicts, you guys are like, great babysitters. My wife was an awesome babysitter when I was drunk. I tell her that. I says, "You were so good." It says, maybe just one night, try it again. She's like, "No."
It's definitely there's a lot that goes into that. But for me, like because I went through all of that, I can hold space. I've worked with a lot of addicts. I have a lot
Right.
of clients that have been in recovery for years, which is great. I will let you know, like for me, if somebody's coming to work with me, if they're in active addiction, I have a whole protocol. You have to be going to meetings, have a sponsor, have everything in place. I won't work with just me and an active addict. But on the other side, just keeping them, I turn into a jerk because I have listened to every addict lie that is out there, and I just am like bullshit, bullshit,
Hmm.
bullshit. So, yeah, no, that's one of my deeper whys because it's like I could not, you can't help somebody that does not want to help themselves.
Right.
The first thing, I could not help my ex, but I've been able to help many others tenfold after. So I'm very thankful for that experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you just made me feel a little bit better because I get and maybe you get this, but I get this on a fairly regular basis because I'm pretty harsh with people in that, what, I made a choice to get better, and I'm still accountable for a number of things 5.5 years later that I'm still fixing and repairing and so forth from that, and I own it. But because I own it, when somebody else doesn't, I'm pretty harsh with that. And people say, "Well, you were there." It's like, yeah, I was there, and then I took the help that was given to me and I did something with it, and I was accountable. For people that, aren't going to be accountable, I have a real hard time with that. And sometimes maybe that's a fine line between being judgmental and just being realistic. I don't know.
Well, yeah, oh man, we could go on for days on this one. There's so much to that because a lot of times people, when they're not accountable and they get into like the narcissistic tendencies and all of that,
Hmm.
they're carrying so much pain within from childhood, from wherever that's at. They're carrying so much that they feel like if you open Pandora's box, they're going to crumble. So if they take accountability for one little string of their big web, they feel like they're going to unravel. It's too much.
Hmm.
They can't handle it. So therefore they cannot do anything. And what they don't realize is holding all of that pain. There's a picture of a meme or something on social media of holding on to a rope and it's cutting the hand. Sometimes when you're holding on to something, it's doing more harm than good. And when
Right.
you let go, you can start healing. People, especially with like what I do with holistic wellness, because I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, life coach, Reiki master. I can go full woo woo and all of the holistic stuff. I mean, my doctorate is in metaphysical science, so I can
Hmm.
go way woo woo. But when you start healing, and I'm not talking about going to the doctor, getting a pill, and putting a band-aid on a symptom. I'm
Right.
talking soul level healing. It is uncomfortable. It is like you basically have to go in and re-break a bone that didn't set properly and allow it time to heal. And so in the beginning of a healing process, It's scary, it's painful. You're like, I'm already in pain. I don't want to feel more pain. But
Mhm.
understanding that that is temporary and that pain is not going to be there, you can actually get through it. That makes sense.
It it does. Yeah, it makes perfect sense on a lot of levels. In we kind of went a little bit off the rails, but in a good way with a lot of good stuff. One thing I want to get back to that you said earlier in the conversation, which I thought was spot on, is you talked about the need to find, especially among police officers, to find the right therapist.
Yeah.
Case in point, I produced a great podcast based on the book Facing Evil, a cop story of murder, mayhem, and the aftermath, and talked to Scott Brown, who lost his partner, obviously extensively throughout the podcast. And one of the many things that he mentions is, he eventually found therapy, and it did help, but not until he went through three or four different therapists to find the one that he could connect with. And I think that is so key when it comes to first responders, because you can't just go to the person that just got out of UCLA and has the degree and wants to put up a shingle, but somebody that has gone through some of the things that the officer does, or at least has had so many of those conversations that, to your words, the therapist he doesn't need therapy after one visit with the police officer. Can you talk a little bit about how important that is and how law enforcement coaching fills that niche?
That is exactly why we have a larger team of people. And one of the reasons that Chris and I go and we always co-present, because in a room, if just us presenting, Chris and I can say the exact same thing. Half the room is going to hear him and resonate with him, and the other half is
Mm,
going to hear me. And some people don't like either of us. That's great. We have a whole team of other people that you can go work with.
mhm.
Now, if you go through all of my coaches and you don't like any of them, that's probably a you problem now. There's there's somebody for everybody, but yeah, and that is part of the frustrating part, and I've done that myself. You do have to sample, you have to figure out. For me, like, I love getting massaged, but I have three different massage therapists because depending on my mood, I have one that's more like deep tissue sports
Mhm.
massage. She's just like, we're gonna break this up and you need to start, wearing different shoes and like rawr. And I was like, okay. And other times I'm not in the mood for that. Like, I want to
Right.
have Reiki and, soothing essential oils and whatnot. So it depends on where you're at. It's not just I have a massage therapist. Done, checks the box. No, you have a team of people. And even within our coaches, we always say that there's no competition in the wellness space, and we really mean
Mhm.
that when it comes to all the other companies. But I also teach that to our coaches when they go through the training. If I'm working, say you're my client, we're working together for months, maybe even years, and we have a really good relationship. But you mentioned you want to promote to detective. I've never been a detective, but Chris has. There's
Mhm.
multiple people on my team that have. Why would I try to hoard you to myself when I can
Right.
pass you off and be like, here, I know we've talked about all this stuff. You don't have to go into that, but you can go get the guidance that you need from this person. Because when we put the client first, just like in marriages, one of the reasons that marriages are so hard when you have kids is because you forget to put the kids first. What's in the best interest of the kids? What's in the best interest of the client? Get them the resources that they need, and then everybody wins. It's not hard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the most important thing to mention is, why would anybody in an audience not like you and Chris? I I heard you both speak. What's not to like about both of you?
Well, you almost made me spit my coffee out. Thank you. First of all, I think we're lovely. Um, People, so for me, I can be very nice. But like I said, I can be a jerk if I need to. Um, People don't like me, and this is actually what got me into life coaching in the first place, because
Mhm,
I used to get a very big reaction from people because I'm very intuitive. I was raised to think and look at things like a cop, so I have a good bullshit detector.
mhm,
And then just very, I just read people. And so when I owned my bar and back in the day, I would call people out on their bullshit. Sorry, we can cuss on this, right?
Oh
Too.
yeah, you're good.
I would call people out all the time, and then they would get really mad at me and be like, you know,
Mm,
"What you da 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 da," and then leave, not talk to me for a while, come back a few months later being like, "You were right, but you were a jerk about it." And I was like, "Okay."
yeah.
So with life coaching, I was like, I have this gift and ability. I need to have some grace. I think there's probably an easier way of getting the person to this answer. So I learned how to keep my mouth shut, basically, in my opinions to myself, ask the questions that are going to drive the person to where they need to go, and then they have the self realization. That's all what coaching is. If you ever have a coach that's giving you advice, that's not a coach.
Mhm.
It's you already know this stuff. It's just having that sounding board to figure it out. So, yeah, no, I you know,
If it makes you
people
feel,
like me.
yeah, if it makes you feel any better, I get that from my wife all the time. We'll have somebody over, and I'll be very direct. And my wife, beautiful person, she's 180 degrees different. She was in healthcare for 30 years, and understands, the peace and the emotional interviewing, and all the, hey, you can kind of go around the corner to get to somebody rather than straight at them. So what I get a lot is, after somebody leaves, I said, was I harsh or was I right? And she would usually say, no, what you said was correct. You could have said it a lot better though.
Well, and that's the thing too, where with working with cops, I like working with cops because everybody's just, for the most part, everybody's just direct. Like, get to the point. What are you trying to say? And that way I don't get hurt feelings. Like, I just say it. But we also had in our training for getting them to be coaches, I had to create an entire section, do not interrogate your clients. Just because you think you know what their answer is, and it can be painstakingly clear what the answer and the truth is, if they haven't figured it out yet, they can be in a shade of gray and they're not lying. You don't have to catch them in anything. So, and even with Chris, because Chris and I are in a relationship with each other and
Hmm.
being raised by a cop and now being in a relationship one, don't interrogate me. Let's have a healthy conversation. We'll get to where you want it to go, but don't interrogate me.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that with my sponsor, who is a former EMT. He'll go down these line of questioning, and I'll say, I know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to take me to a certain point here, and I could see it, and it's pissing me off. And then what his response is usually, it's like, hey, it's just a question, man.
Awesome.
Any Anyhow, getting to one of the points, going back to law enforcement coaching, and I mentioned this before I pressed record. Personally, as a supporter, as a citizen who's never been a cop but supports law enforcement, very vehemently, I am happy to see over the last, say, decade or so, that there's a lot more professionals like you offering this type of high quality wellness for law enforcement officers. As a citizen, I want more access, for police officers to have this. But on the other hand, as a business entrepreneur, growth of businesses type of a guy, the competition, and yeah, we say there's not a lot of, we're not in competition, but at the end of the day, there needs to be a bottom line. So for law enforcement coaching, what sets you apart from all the other providers out there? What is your niche? What is the reason why somebody say, you know what, I want to go to Dr. Tammy Sharp and Chris Samora and those people, because I think they got it going on more so than anybody else.
Great question and topic. I talk about this a lot on our podcast too, that in this space, in the wellness space in law enforcement, it has grown finally. It's people are coming around. We still have a long way to go. There are still
Mhm.
some people in leadership positions that don't get it, and I don't know I don't know what to do besides go find them and shake them and say, hey, you need to take care of your people and take care of yourself. It doesn't have to be that way. There is a lot of noise. I always say there are a lot of people that understand marketing, and you understand marketing, you appreciate. You need to be able to market your business, but there are some people that have really honed in marketing and sales, and they don't have the deliverables behind it. So
Mhm.
they can kind of manipulate and make it look shiny. Look at all of our Yelp reviews and look at this shiny, 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 right? We don't do any of that. We are starting to do more marketing, but the way it doesn't matter in law enforcement, the way to be successful is who you know, because there's an instant, like if this person says that this person's worth talking to, there's a credibility and trust there. So that's how we do. We are more behind the scenes and the slow grow. We plan on being around for a long, long time in this
Mhm.
space. And we want to literally, our mission statement is to be a catalyst of change for the culture of wellness within law enforcement, which takes time. We're shifting an entire culture of don't talk about it, suck it up, buttercup. You're going to get fired if you have any kind of mental breakdown after going to five dead baby calls. Like, that's not okay. So we have to come and pivot from that, which is going to take time. So one of the things that makes us different is we operate with what we call our heart philosophy. So honor, ethics, I can't say authenticity.
Authenticity.
You. The heart.
Big word in the
Heart.
brand development community. Authenticity.
Authenticity, respect, and trust. Um, we have integrity. We lead with integrity. If our morals are going to be compromised, I'm not going to go for a paycheck over our integrity. So that is where we come in. The other thing with us is we're not coming in like we have all of the answers or we are the end all be all solution. We're one resource. When we work with a department, so there's different parts with that. Ultimately, we want to contract with departments and be able to sit and do the business side with them, figure out the red tape, the bureaucracy, the budgets, and all of the details. And
Mhm.
then the officers just have it available to them. They don't have to think. They can push a button and go do what they need to do. Um, it is available to officers across the country that can come pay out of pocket. Unfortunately, we don't get covered by insurance because we're holistic, but you can pay out
Mhm.
of pocket, and there's different ways of doing that for the individual because some departments just like again they don't get it. But for the most part, we work with the departments and we create a customized plan to that department.
Mhm.
We start with a survey to figure out kind of where the climate is and then go from there because we've worked with departments that are literally in each other's backyard. Every department has a different culture. Every department has different internal problems. Some are, have all great sergeants that are really leading the charge and they're amazing. And then others could probably stand to go back to FTO a little bit.
Mhm.
So
No, no, great answer on that. And I keep thinking too, sometimes it isn't paid by insurance, but I'm assuming I know, from my standpoint, sometimes you can take advantage of a health savings account and funds from that source, if you will, that is perfectly legitimate and also helps the officers get the help that they need from experts like you guys.
if I could wave a magic wand, that is what I would do for most people. And there are some departments that have it. There are different states have different rules, but
Right.
basically just giving a first responder, not just officers. And we work with sworn side, non-sworn, and then we're also in the process of launching out duty-driven consulting, which is
Mm-hmm.
for purpose-driven professionals. That includes fire, EMS. We work with judges. We work with animal
Mm-hmm.
rescue. Um, but giving basically like a debit card or a credit card. It's like, hey, you have $2,000 for the year to spend on your wellness the way that you need, and
Mm-hmm.
just make sure you're taking care of yourself. Uh,
Yeah.
I wish that that could be the thing for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan of giving resources or helping people with health savings accounts and having building their own resources to be able to help themselves. I think that that's a great resource. Let's get into we started off, we talked about your background, we talked about stressors and residual effects and things of that nature. Getting a little bit more into the technical side, what are some of those unique stressors that you see in law enforcement specifically versus other first responders, and how do you treat that? What are some of the things that you do to help people along?
Well, that really comes into what the presentation that you saw is the duty-driven
Right.
curation. We have our training and we look at the different phases that people typically find themselves in throughout a career, whether it's law enforcement or others. Typically, you start something new, you're excited, and you can get very easily overinvested, which can work great for you. I'm over invested in my business. I'm dedicated to my business. I make sure I keep myself in check because if I don't, that's going to go into burnout. Burnout is the
Mhm.
number one word that everybody throws around. We're all burned out. We're all tired. If you don't manage the burnout, you don't start taking care of yourself and reaching out to talk about it or take a break or whatever that is. We go into the other phases that we have as breakdown and meltdown. And so we give
Mhm.
everybody a proactive plan. Like if you find yourself in one of these phases, what are you going to do? Don't just say, I'm going to reach out to therapist. Who? Who's the therapist? Have you already vetted them? For the guys that are sitting in the back of the room with their arms crossed, being like, I don't need this, I'm fine. I'm like, beautiful. That's the time that you should be finding your wellness team. Because the day that you wake up that you're not fine, it's hard just to function, let alone go find a therapist. You're not going to want to. Or if you find yourself in the point like with alcohol and addiction, what's the first step or the biggest problem is admitting that you have a problem. So it takes a
Mhm.
lot to understand, like have that self-awareness. So burnout is one of the biggest things, law enforcement specific, just taking so many constant slaps in the face and then still getting up and going and doing the job. Started,
Mhm.
COVID, the mandates, the masks, the ridiculousness that came with all of that. Then you have the defund the police movement, which hurt everybody.
Mhm.
Budgets continue to get cut. We were working under contract under a grant in a state, I won't say. Um, there was more demand by all of the departments. All of the departments put in for this grant because they're like, we need wellness, we need this. And so
Right.
what did they do? Or what, not necessarily them, but the politicians? Oh, you need it, there's more demand, we should probably cut the budget for that. So now there's
Mhm.
less money with more demand. Oh, this program's actually working. Well, let's just cancel it because it's working.
Right.
So everything's going against them, laws are going against them, and then social media is just one of the reasons that we launched our podcast. I'm like, you have the voice of a few that are
Mhm.
really loud, that are
Right.
controlling the narrative. So the ones that are like us, we need to get louder. We have to
Yeah.
put our voice out there, or else you just get drowned out by idiots. And so getting I can go on a whole nother tangent too, because social media and the algorithms are 100% working against cops. It's
Right.
making it seem like everybody hates cops, but when you go out to the communities in most places, that is not the case.
Right.
Backing the blue is very much supported. So it's a compounding thing of the stressors on top of the job. And then my long-winded tangent, but the biggest component of all of the problems is not the job. Yes, there are calls that are going to stick with you
Mhm.
and are going to mess with you. It's the friggin' relentless internal politics and drama that is taking the people out. When you
Yeah.
have negative people and you create low morale and a department cancer, it goes to everybody. And you get an individual who's a really good employee looking at, I don't want to be miserable for the next
Mhm.
15 years of my life. So I have a choice. I can go to another department or I can leave this profession altogether and go get happy. Because at the end of the day, we all want to have some form of internal peace. And so the departments that are refusing to take wellness seriously, the ones that are refusing to loosen the reins on budgets. I have so many friends that are wellness professionals that cannot get $5 from their department to invest into their people. So we
Yeah.
really got to just shake the rug out because a lot's not working. You got me on a tangent. Sorry.
No, no, that's I'm the one that usually rambles on the show, so I'm glad that somebody else has that same problem. But it wasn't a ramble or a tangent. It was all good stuff. And what I see as well. I mean, I live in a so-called blue city. I live in Long Beach, California. And I think that it's awesome. I've had the privilege of meeting the chief a couple of times, Chief Wally Habush, and I remember when he got the job and started doing some of these community meetings and online meetings through the council people. One of the first things he talked about was how important officer wellness is. and the culture of the police department, and being a brand culture strategy guy, I loved hearing that. And I could see, I mean, obviously I don't interact with the Long Beach Police on a regular basis, but I go to Long Beach Police Officer Association events, and was at one last month, which was a poker tournament, and talking to a couple of the officers, and just said, hey, really appreciate what you guys are doing. And my wife and her friend said the same thing, and our friend echoed what you said, is there's so much negativity on social media, and there's so much people that that just hate you guys for no reason. And what he said actually made me feel good, in that he iterated what you just said, is that's a small loud percentage.
Mhm.
And he said, I can't tell you how many times I'm going around the city and people are saying thank you and be safe and hey, we appreciate you. And he says, I see a lot more of that. And it's good to see in a blue city with a liberal mayor that, people are recognizing our police officers. And then he also said, which was kind of funny, he says every once in a while, he says I'll be on my motorcycle, and somebody will be out and go, "Hey, F you, I hate you, go to hell." And he goes, the first thing I think of is, you must have some real problems to be yelling at a stranger that's just, happens to be in uniform.
Well, and the thing too, there's a few different types of people that hate cops. One,
Mm,
criminals.
yeah.
Shocking. And when I say criminals, not necessarily you can, got busted, but I have friends that do drugs and party and do stupid
Mm.
shit, and it's, oh, they don't like it. Well, no shit, because you do stuff that, that you can't be comfortable with a cop. There are others, the younger generation typically, but we're so heavily influenced by social media, and people just want to belong. So they want
Mm,
to feel like they belong to something. So if it's the anti-police club, I
yeah.
those ones, I'm like, do you know a cop? Have you ever met a cop? And the funny
Mm.
thing is, well, actually, my uncle's a cop and he's a good dude, but the rest of them, I'm like, no, 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 that's not how that works. Not how that works.
Yeah,
And then there are the smaller few that have actually had bad interactions with
you're
police,
right.
have justified reason for not trusting or liking the police. But that's also, I've dealt with bad cops. I've been pulled over by assholes before, and
Yep.
I've also been pulled over. Not that I'm getting pulled over all the time. That sounds bad, but I've only have one speeding ticket ever.
Yeah.
But I've dealt with cops that, and that's one of the reasons I preach to the cops. It takes one cop, one bad cop to forever change the trajectory
Yep.
for somebody, but one good cop that, especially the younger generation, you show up and you're nice, you have compassion, you give some grace, especially to the kids. SROs get so much crap. Oh, SRO, like they're not like real cops. Yeah, they are. They're dealing with the youth.
Mhm.
And if they are doing a good job in the school, some of those kids are going to actually be cops because of the
Yep.
impact that that one had. So, yeah.
Agreed. Completely agreed. Doc, I could talk to you for another hour, but we both have stuff to do. And both of us would probably get on a couple of rambles, which would be fine, probably some good content. Uh, but as we close up, one question I ask a lot of people, or some version of this question, and I know part of it isn't really fair, but if there was one thing, because sometimes there's always 50, 150 things that you could do to help somebody, or that they can do for themselves. But when it comes to business, I usually tell clients, especially businesses with a lot of problems, let's focus on one thing first. Let's do this, and then you will take care of the next problem. So from that perspective, if there's one thing that you could suggest to a first responder that may be struggling, may be in crisis, if there was one thing he or she could do, what might that be?
Accountability, like we talked about,
Hmm.
self-responsibility. It is not your department's responsibility to save you. They're not going to come save you, especially if you're not telling them that anything's going on. They're not psychic. So you have to take responsibility for your wellness and figure out what that looks like, figure out a plan that works for you. And it doesn't matter if everybody else is like, why are you seeing, a Reiki practitioner? That's weird. If it works for you, it works for you. And it's also not a one checkbox approach. You need to have an entire arsenal of different wellness people for different phases of your life and time. So taking yourself and being like, I'm going to go take care of myself, and this is what I need. And to just cap that, no is a sentence, and it's okay when you're in a lower space to go to your sergeant, to go to your command staff and say, hey, I am wherever I'm at. You don't have to tell them too much. You can just say, hey, I need to take some time for myself so that I can you want to worry about retention. I need to go take myself out for a couple days so you can keep me for a couple years. Otherwise, it's not going to be good for any of us.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
that's a great answer, especially on the accountability. I say all the time, alcoholism is my problem, and it's my responsibility to take care of it. Whatever resources that is, whether it's AA or Life Ring or meditating or just going to the friggin' gym, whatever it is, that's my responsibility. And I think, when people take responsibility for their own issues, their own mental health, then there's a ton of resources out there.
And then to piggyback on the alcohol, the AA philosophy of, being a sponsor, you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to be a step ahead. So for those in the department that have been through some stuff, and the retired community as well, if you've been through something and you've figured out something that works, don't hoard that to yourself. Share it, talk about it, get on the podcast, write your book, go back to the department, do a training. A lot of time, the older generation doesn't talk about it. Normalize talking, share your story, because somebody else is looking at you as inspiration and motivation. And whether you get to hear the confirmation or not, I promise you, your words are impacting somebody.
Well said. Yeah, Doc, it's been great talking to you. For those folks out there who, maybe need a little bit of help, or they need a speaker from law enforcement coaching, or just want to listen to the blah, blah, blah wellness podcast, how best can they find law enforcement coaching and a Dr. Tammy Sharp out there?
Lawenforcementcoaching.com. That's the quickest thing. Law enforcement coaching, social media, all the things, blah, 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 something wellness podcast, put my name in, Tammy, Tami Sharp. And then if you go to the website, pretty much all roads lead to me. I maybe perfectionistic tendencies, I don't know, but you'll get a hold of me pretty easily. So, and then I can put you wherever you need to go. And if you're not sure, like if you're looking at our coaches, you're like, hey, I want to work with a coach, I don't know who, reach out to me and I can match you with someone. We have a search bar so you can kind of find your criteria, but I can match you as well. And if money is an issue, we never want money to be a problem. So if that is a real problem for you and you need help, just reach out. We'll talk.
Yep. Awesome, Doc. And I can attest to the fact that you are very accessible out there and very responsive to email, LinkedIn, all that other fun stuff. So, Doc, it's been a privilege. Really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to all of you who have either watched or listened to this episode of Public Safety Talk Radio. And we'll be back next week with another great guest. Public Safety Talk Radio is produced by Bader Training and Consulting. Public Safety Talk Radio is also proud to be a part of the growing National Police Podcast Network. The National Police Podcast Network is a dedicated media network powered by the National Police Federal Credit Union, developed in partnership with experienced podcast professionals and public safety advocates. Learn more about the National Police Federal Credit Union at nationalpolicefcu.com.